afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Pike County Physical Courtroom in the historic Pike County Courthouse. We want to thank each and every one of you for joining us here this afternoon and for being a part of a great celebration and a very sentimental occasion. Today, we reaffirm Pike County's thanks to those fallen police officers. By dedicating these memorials, we are ensuring that they will never be forgotten, and we will always be remembered for who they were and what they did in protecting and serving the people of our county and our state. They are heroes in every sense of the word, and they deserve this remembrance as we dedicate here today the Fallen Police Officer Memorial and the memorial to Roy Conway, the Roy Conway Fallen Police Officer Memorial, and the Fallen Police Officer Memorial. The Fallen Police Officer Memorial will be outside. We'll be having that unveiling at the conclusion of this ceremony. The Roy Conway Fallen Police Officer Memorial is here in one of the hallways of the courthouse on the first floor, and we will be unveiling that memorial prior to going outside for the second unveiling. Because of the inclement weather and our fear of even worse weather, we decided to do the whole program here in this courtroom with the exception of the unveiling. We apologize for the lack of seats. We're overwhelmed by the response and the turnout here today by police officers, by the family of police officers who have fallen in the line of duty, by current police officers, by friends of police officers, by those of us who admire and respect what those officers do for us on a daily basis today and have done for us in the past, particularly those officers who have paid the supreme sacrifice in the line of duty. At this time, I would like to call upon a good friend of mine, retired Pikeville City Police Detective Ray Akers, to deliver our invocation. Mr. Akers, we can call him now, is also the pastor of Amazing Grace Worship Center. He previously worked for the U.S. Marshals Service and currently serves as a Pike County Special Deputy. Ray Akers.
Thank you, Brother Doug. Let us pray. We're going to ask God to watch over these peacemakers. It says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 9, I believe, "Blessed are the peacemakers." We thank you all. I want to say that I've been proud to be one. And let's pray. Almighty God, we just ask you today, Lord, as we come here and we honor the ones that are fallen, as Brother Doug said, that we not forget, that we keep these in our memory. And God, as each and every one comes to speak today, may they say something that will touch the hearts of those that, the loved ones of those that are come here today to see the names of their loved one on this memorial. We put it here, God, to remember, just as you place your symbols in our lives and our hearts. It's in Jesus' name that I pray, and for his sake, amen.
And now the City of Pikeville Police Department Honor Guard with the posting of the colors. If you would remain standing at this time, I would call upon Trooper Sean Little, Public Affairs, Post 9, Kentucky State Police, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Excuse me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you will remain standing for the Star Spangled Banner, that will be sung by Lauren Stewart of the Artists Collaborative Theater right here in Pike County. Lauren.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Lauren. You may be seated. Let me say this, that we have a number of dignitaries with us today. A number of them will be introduced as we move through this program. We've decided, however, to depart from tradition and not recognize office holders. This is a very solemn occasion on the dedication of these two, the monument and the memorial. And I do want to say, though, that I see circuit judges here, district judges here, the county attorney's here, Keith Hall, a number of the sheriffs here and the jailer, the people that are here that should be here to honor these brave men and women who serve us so faithfully and so well. And we do appreciate you being here, and I know all the officers, and I know all the families that are here representing the fallen officers appreciate your attendance. So I wanted to make that clear. At this time, we're going to do a presentation and recognition of the fallen police officers. If you will direct your attention to the overhead screen, let me say that we and Terry Thompson and the Pike County chapter of the Fraternal Order of the Police have done a tremendous job in getting information, photographs, and all together for both the monument and the memorial. However, it's still a work in progress. You can rest assured that we're not finished today. We hope that there's never another name added to either memorial or monument. We pray that that's the case. But those names that are already there, we hope to add photographs as we move on in our research, Terry, and any information that we can. So when you see these, particularly the Roy Conway Fallen Police Officers Memorial here in the hallway, there will be some missing photographs. We got one in this very day, and so we made arrangements that those will be added. But as we do this, I'm going to tell you some information about each of the officers whose photograph you will see. Daniel, can we dim these lights to make this perhaps a little bit better? It's not too bad, but if we could maybe dim the lights in front, it would be helpful. As Daniel is making your way, you will see Sheriff Roy Conway on the screen. That's his photograph. Daniel, I think that would be fine. Sheriff Roy Conway, the end of watch, July 28, 1950. Sheriff Roy Conway was shot in the back and killed in his own front yard by two brothers angry over his crackdown on bootlegging and gambling. Sheriff Conway and his deputies had raided their father's drinking establishment and was shot. Both brothers were convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison on September 28, 1950. Sheriff Conway had been elected only 6 months earlier. He was survived by his wife and 4 daughters. His wife was appointed to serve the remainder of his term as Pike County Sheriff after his death. Deputy James I. Thacker, badge number 71, end of watch, January 23, 2012. Deputy Sheriff James Thacker was killed in an automobile accident on US 460 just past Barebone Creek Road here in Pike County at approximately 9 p.m. He was returning to Elkhorn City from Pikeville at the end of his shift when an SUV crossed the center line and struck his patrol car head on. Deputy Thacker succumbed to his injuries at the scene. Poster Pos Keen, end of watch, May 8, 1993. Deputy Poster Keen was killed in an automobile accident when his patrol car was struck head-on by an oncoming car on Route 23 just outside Pikeville at 1:10 a.m. The driver of the vehicle that caused the accident was also killed, and 2 individuals in Deputy Keen's patrol car were also injured. Pike County Deputy Sheriff Poster Keen, Pos Keen, had served with the Sheriff's Department for 20 years at the time of his death. Earl Smith, end of watch, May 15, 1979. Deputy Earl Smith was shot and killed while attempting to serve a warrant. As Deputy Smith approached the back door, the suspect fired through the screen, striking him. The suspect then shot him 5 more times. The suspect's sister had the warrant taken out on the man. The suspect pled not guilty by reason of insanity and was acquitted. Deputy Smith had been with the Sheriff's Department for 35 years and was survived by his wife, 12 children, and several grandchildren. John F. Cable, end of watch, October 2nd, 1940. Pike County Deputy Sheriff John F. Cable was shot and killed by a prisoner he had arrested for disorderly conduct. As Deputy Cable drove the suspect to jail, they stopped at a service station after the man requested to use the restroom. The man was taking an unusually long time, and when he went to check on the man, the prisoner opened fire upon Deputy Cable. Despite being mortally wounded, Deputy Cable returned fire. Pike County Sheriff's Deputy John F. Cable was survived by his wife, 4 daughters, 4 brothers, and 1 sister. Boyd Weston Hatfield, end of watch, November 11, 1931. Pike County Deputy Sheriff Boyd Weston Hatfield was shot and killed by a suspect after responding to a disturbance call. Deputy Boyd would succumb to his wounds at the age of 48. He was survived by his wife. Earl Scott, end of watch, January 7, 1939. Sheriff Earl Scott was killed in an automobile accident on the Logan-Huntington Highway near Salt Rock, Cable County, West Virginia. He had traveled to West Virginia with another deputy and Pike County attorney to extradite 2 prisoners back to Pike County. The prisoners had been placed in a West Virginia State Police patrol car, and they were caravanning to Huntington to appear for an extradition hearing. A state highway truck attempted to pass Sheriff Scott's car, but cut back into his lane too early and struck the front fender. His car went out of control and overturned, ejecting him and then landing on top of him. The driver of the state highway truck was immediately arrested and charged with manslaughter. Sheriff Scott was survived by his wife and 2 children. Thomas C. Tackett, better known as Crit Tackett. End of watch, December 16, 1929. Pike County Deputy Sheriff Thomas C. Tackett was shot and killed when he and another man were investigating a stopped car parked in the middle of the roadway. Deputy Tackett and his friend were returning home after transporting a prisoner to jail when they came across the car in the road. As they stopped to offer assistance, believing the car was stalled, Deputy Tackett's friend observed one of the men inside the vehicle hide something behind his back. Thinking the man had a gun, the friend drew his weapon and ordered the man to show his hands. As Deputy Tackett approached the car, he identified himself as a deputy sheriff and was immediately shot by one of the occupants of the vehicle. Deputy Tackett's friend immediately returned fire as the suspects fled. The 3 men, including a father and son, were arrested a short time later and charged with murder. Deputy Tackett succumbed to his wounds at the age of 40. He was survived by his wife and 8 children. Frank Phillips, end of watch, December 13, 1926. Deputy Frank Phillips was shot and killed while questioning 2 brothers who were drunk and causing a disturbance. And that was in front of one of our local businesses. When he began questioning the men, they became belligerent and a struggle ensued. The 2 brothers drew weapons and shot Deputy Phillips. Despite being mortally wounded, he was able to return fire and seriously wounded one of the suspects. Deputy Phillips succumbed to his wounds at the age of 38. He was survived by his wife, 1 child, his mother, 2 brothers, and 4 half-sisters. Louis Casebolt, end of watch, May 25, 1926. Pike County Deputy Sheriff Louis Casebolt succumbed to a gunshot wound sustained 2 days before his passing by a man who was attempting to free a prisoner. The prisoner had just been arrested for moonshining when the subject opened fire on the officers, mortally wounding Deputy Casebolt. Another officer returned fire and killed the subject. Deputy Louis Casebolt passed away at the age of 44. He was survived by his wife. Jesse Farrell, end of watch, May 30, 1925. Pike County Deputy Sheriff Jesse Farrell was shot and killed while attempting to serve a warrant on a man for bootlegging. Despite being mortally wounded, Deputy Farrell was able to return fire and kill the suspect. Deputy Sheriff Jesse Farrell was 32 years old at the time of his death. Walter Deal, end of watch, January 10th, 1921. Pike County Deputy Sheriff Walter Deal was shot and killed after arresting a man for disorderly conduct. After taking the man's revolver, Deputy Deal told the man to simply go home. The man took a few steps, turned, and opened fire with another pistol he had managed to conceal, and Deputy Deal was fatally wounded. The suspect was arrested and charged with murder. Sheriff's Deputy Walter Deal passed away at the age of 43. Bud Daniels, end of watch, March 28, 1928. Pike County Deputy Sheriff Bud Daniels was shot and killed while attempting to arrest Arthur Blankenship of Freeburn, Kentucky. Deputy Daniels would succumb to his wounds March 28, 1928. Charles Smith, end of watch, 1911. Pike County Deputy Sheriff Charles Smith, husband of renowned Kentucky poet Effie Waller Smith, an African American, by the way, from right here in Pikeville, was shot and killed in the line of duty while serving a warrant. While in the process of arresting the male suspect, who was a moonshiner, the suspect's sister shot Deputy Smith in the chest. 3 days later, he would succumb to his wounds and depart this earth. Posse Man Patton Bartley, end of watch, February 19th, 1917. Posse Man Patton Bartley succumbed to wounds sustained the previous day when he was shot as he assisted several deputies apprehend a man who had just been involved in a shooting. The posse overtook the man about a mile from the scene, but were immediately fired upon. Posse Man Bartley was struck in the abdomen and wounded. The other deputies returned fire and shot the suspect. Both wounded men were taken to Jenkins Hospital in Letcher County, where they both died the following day. Posse Man Bartley also served as Whitesburg's postmaster. He was survived by his wife. Trooper Elmer Mobley, end of watch, May 28, 1964. Trooper Elmer Mobley, Jr., age 33, was fatally injured in a vehicle accident May 28, 1964, while responding to a call for assistance in Pike County. Trooper Cecil W. Uzzle, I hope I pronounced that right, along with Trooper Mobley, were both killed in the accident when their vehicle struck large rocks that had fallen in the roadway and were hidden by heavy rain and dense fog. Trooper Mobley was assigned to Pike County's KSP Post 9 and served the Kentucky State Police for 4.5 years. He was survived by his wife and one son. Trooper Mobley is buried at Oneida Settlement School in Clay County, Kentucky. Trooper Cecil W. Uzzle. Okay. End of watch, May 28, 1964. This trooper, age 29, was also fatally injured in a vehicle accident, that same one I just told you about, on May 28, 1964, while accompanying Trooper Elmer Mobley, Jr. in response to a call for assistance here in Pike County. And I won't repeat the details of the accident, but two fine men died together in the service of Pike County, in the service of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, in the service of their nation, and in the service of you and I. And by the way, I didn't tell you, he had served for Post 9 for 2 years, so a short time, and is buried at the cemetery in Morton's Gap in Hopkins County down in western Kentucky. In honor of his service and sacrifice, Kentucky 1460 in Pike County has been designated as the Trooper Cecil W. Uzzle Memorial Highway. Trooper Bobby McCown Jr., end of watch, September 1st, 1975. Trooper Bobby A. McCown Jr., age 23, died September the 1st, 1975, as a result of an accidental shooting at the Pikeville Jail in Pike County, Kentucky. Trooper McCown was assigned to Pike County's Kentucky State Police Post Number 9 and served with the Kentucky State Police for 2 years. He is buried at the Lawrenceburg Cemetery in Anderson County, Kentucky. In honor of his service and sacrifice, a 5-mile stretch of US 127 in Anderson County has been designated the Trooper Bobby A. McCown Memorial Highway. Trooper Jerome Clifton, end of watch, October 1st, 1980. Trooper Jerome S. Clifton, age 30, was fatally shot October 1st, 1980, while attempting to arrest a shooting suspect in a domestic disturbance incident in Pike County. Trooper Clifton was assigned to Pike County's Kentucky State Police Post Number 9 and was a 9-year veteran of the state police. He was survived by his wife and 2 daughters. He is buried at Davidson Memorial Gardens at Ivell in Floyd County, Kentucky. In honor of his service and sacrifice, U.S. Route 23 from the railroad bridge between Allen and Dwell has been designated the Jerome Butch Clifton Memorial Bridge. Trooper Jonathan Leonard, end of watch, December 19, 2006. Trooper Jonathan Leonard, age 28, was involved in a 2-vehicle collision on U.S. Route 119 in the community of Sidney here in Pike County. Trooper Leonard was assigned to Pike County's Kentucky State Police Post Number 9 and served with the Kentucky State Police for 3 years. In honor of his service and sacrifice, Kentucky State Route 468 in Pike County was named the Trooper Jonathan K. Leonard Highway in June of 2008 by way of resolution of the Pike County Fiscal Court. Alonzo Robinson, end of watch, May 16, 1929. Policeman Alonzo Lon Robertson, age 39, died May 16, 1929, after he was shot while working with a United States Deputy Marshal to serve a search warrant on a man for possession of alcohol during the Prohibition era of 1920 to 1933. Law enforcement officers were charged during that time with a very tough task, particularly here in the mountains, of enforcing the Volstead Act of the United States government. After successfully serving the warrant, the officers removed a handgun and a bottle of whiskey from the suspect, but as the men walked the suspect away from his home, he pulled out a second concealed handgun and opened fire. Officer Robinson was struck in the chest and killed, and the deputy marshal was wounded during the incident as well. P. Bart Rowe, end of watch, in the spring 1926. Elkhorn City Marshal P. Bart Rowe, 36, was killed in 1926 while attempting to arrest a man who reportedly seemed to be crazy. Upon confronting the man, a scuffle ensued and Rowe knocked the man to the ground. As the man helped himself up from the ground, he pulled out a pistol and shot Marshal Rowe in the stomach. Eyewitness accounts of the incident reported that Marshal Rowe screamed at the man, "You've killed me now I'll kill you." And he then shot and killed the man. Elkhorn City Marshal P. Bart Rowe would die shortly after, despite the local doctor's best effort. His funeral services drew a remarkable crowd of over 1,500 residents from throughout Pike County who wished to pay their final respects. Meredith Wooford, End of watch, October 27, 1936. Phelps, Kentucky, Marshal Meredith Wofford, age 48, succumbed to gunshot wounds sustained 2 days earlier while attempting to arrest a county constable in 1936. The constable had become upset because Marshal Wofford had arrested one of his friends the previous night. Upon speaking with the constable, Marshal Wofford became fearful for his life and returned to town. He deputized a citizen and returned to the constable's previous location to arrest him. However, as Wofford and his new deputy approached the constable, he opened fire, fatally wounding Wofford. The constable who had shot Wofford was also fatally shot during the hail of gunfire as well. Marshal Wofford was taken to a hospital in Matewan, West Virginia, where he died 2 days later. Glenn Hayes Moore, end of watch, July 12, 1970. Pike County Deputy Jailer Glenn Hayes Moore, age 32, was killed in the line of duty after being shot by an inmate in the Pike County Detention Center on Sunday, July 12, 1970. Those responsible for Deputy Jailer Moore's untimely end were apprehended shortly after and charged with first-degree murder. Before his employment with the Pike County Detention Center, Deputy Jailer Moore served 4 years in the United States Air Force and worked in Michigan for several years before returning to home to Shelbyana after the death of his father. Klein Tackett, end of watch, June 16, 1935. Pike County Deputy Constable Klein Tackett, age 38, died June 16, 1935, after he was shot while he and a fellow deputy attempted to arrest 3 brothers for public intoxication. Noah Friend, end of watch, November 13, 1963. United States Deputy Marshal Noah R. Friend, 49, of Pikeville, Kentucky, passed away November 13, 1963, as the result of an automobile collision while transporting prisoners from federal court en route to the Bell County Jail. November the 13th, a dark and rainy evening, as later described by witnesses, as the marshal's motorcade left the federal courthouse. Deputy Marshal Friend and 1 prisoner were killed in the accident. Deputy Marshal Friend, a native of Pike County, served the United States Marshal's Service for more than 15 years. I tell you, I don't know how you feel at the present time, but I almost feel like I'm hollowed out, like something has just moved into my insides and taken it out of me, having read of these fallen heroes. And I just want us to take a moment. This is not in the program. This is something that I just want you to do. And just take a moment and bow your head and in silent prayer. I just want you to, each of you in your own way and in your own manner, to thank God that we have such brave men and women who are willing to put their very lives on line to protect us from the evil in our society. Just take a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Now, I should have done something, and I'm going to back up and do it very quickly here. And I think it's probably better to do it this way anyway, Judge. I meant to ask the family of each of the men whose names I've just read and recognize them. I meant to ask you to stand while I read their names. And so now I'm going to read their names. I'm not going to read the remarks again. But I'm going to read their names, and as I read them, I would like for the family members who are present here just to stand and be recognized. I would just simply ask that you withhold your applause till the end, and everyone is recognized in order that we can save time. And so I'll start again with Sheriff Roy Conway. I know we have several family members here with us. And you all need to kind of turn around and let everybody see you, including those who will be watching on Pike TV. And thank you. Deputy James I. Thacker. Please turn around and thank you. Poster, Poskeen. They're all in the back. Thank you for being here. Earl Smith. I know we have some of his family out here in the second row. Thank you. John F. Cable. Any family members for John Cable? Oh, back here on my left, and thank you for being here, man. Boyd Weston Hatfield. Thank you, sir. Earl Scott. Thomas C. Tackett. And as I said earlier, he was known as Crit Tackett, I believe, and Senator Jones will be making some remarks shortly about not only Deputy Sheriff Tackett, but on behalf of not only your family, and his family, being a great-great-grandson, and he'll be making some remarks on behalf of all the family members just in a few minutes. Frank Phillips. Louis Casebolt. Jesse Farrell. Walter Deal. Bud Daniels. Charles Smith. Patton Bartley. I'm sorry? Oh, okay, yes. Mm-hmm. Thank you for being here. Elmer Mobley. Cecil Uzzle. Bobby McCown Jr. Jerome Clifton. Jonathan Leonard. Thank you. Alonzo Robinson. P. Bart Rowe. Meredith Wolford. Glenn Hayes Moore. Klein Tackett. Noah Friend. Thank you all. Moving right along now, if we could, as we continue our program, we have some remarks by several folks here today. If I can find my program, we'll get right to those. First, we have remarks by Eric Johnson. Eric is Executive Director of Supporting Heroes. Eric retired after serving 15 years with the Louisville Division of Police, Louisville Metro Police Department, as a police sergeant. And when he comes up here and looking at how his size, I want to know who in Jefferson County would have been crazy enough to cross paths with this man, I'll tell you that. He previously served 9 years with the City of Louisville Emergency Medical Services, where he held the rank of lieutenant. As the principal founder of Supporting Heroes, he serves as trustee as well as being executive director. Eric Johnson.
Should have requested a taller microphone. Thank you. I'm very honored to be here today for this very important event as we remember and honor so many heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice for this community. I couldn't help but be moved by the stories of the heroes, but even more so as the family stood, I thought about how much this community was impacted and made better because of the service and sacrifice of so many people. But I also couldn't help but realize how so many lives have been impacted because of their dedication to duty and because of what they gave to this community. I know many of you, your lives were dramatically changed because of the service and the sacrifice of your loved one. A hero's sacrifice is forever, and so is that of his family. As he mentioned, I'm with Supporting Heroes. We support families of police officers, firefighters, and EMS workers who are killed in the line of duty. We honor the service and sacrifice of the heroes by taking care of the loved ones they leave behind. And I can tell you from that experience, working with so many families, one of the biggest concerns of a family following the death of a loved one in the line of duty is that somehow they will be forgotten. And I'm pleased to say today that because of the vision and the commitment of so many people that made these memorials a reality, they will not be forgotten. Perhaps like many of you here, I did not know any of the individuals whose names appear on the memorial. But I feel I've gotten to know some of them just a little by getting to know some of the members of their family. Deputy James I. Thacker, Trooper Jonathan Leonard, and Sheriff Roy Conway. I also feel like I know some things about every one of them because I've gotten to know so many like them. And I submit to you that you know some things about every one of them as well. First, we know that in many ways they were ordinary people. Many of them grew up here. They were sons of Pike County. They went to Pike County schools. They belonged to Pike County churches. In many cases, they married Pike County daughters, and they raised families here in Pike County. They had neighbors and they had friends, and they were concerned about the same sorts of things that we are all concerned about: paying our bills, supporting our families, taxes, elections, and more. They were good citizens. Yes, in many ways they were ordinary, but we also know that in many other ways they were extraordinary. They did not just care about this community, they cared deeply about this community. They didn't just care about the other citizens of Pike County. They cared enough that they were willing to risk their lives on a daily basis to serve and protect and to help make Pike County a better place. They not only wanted Pike County to be a good place, a safe place, but a place where people could live, work, and raise their families comfortably and without fear. And if necessary, they were willing to give their lives in that endeavor. It is a commitment that they made when they took their oaths of office, and it is a commitment they reinforced each and every day of their careers. And when their final call to duty came, they did not waver. I said I know some things about them because I've gotten to know so many like them. We all know individuals who serve in law enforcement. And I submit that it is the same qualities of character, bravery, compassion, and dedication that drew people to law enforcement and drove them to risk their lives in the service of others in the early 1900s, such as in 1911 when Deputy Smith served and fell, the first one on the wall, as it is today. Karen, there's a reason Jonathan worked so hard just for the privilege of being able to serve as a trooper. He had the heart of a servant and the commitment of a warrior. Judy, Colleen, and Nancy, there is a reason your father committed himself to fighting crime and cleaning up corruption. He did it because of who he was. He did it for the citizens of Pike County, and he did it for your mom and for each of you. It is because of what was inside each of these men that we dedicate this memorial today. We do not honor them because they died or because of how they died. We honor and we remember them because of how they lived.
This time I would like to call upon Keith Broughton, who's treasurer of and serves on the board of the Kentucky chapter of COPS. Now, COPS stands for Concerns of Police Survivors. COPS has become a lifeline to law enforcement survivors nationwide, helping them to cope following the tragedies they have experienced. Mr. Broughton is a sergeant with the Woodford County Sheriff's Department and previously served with the Versailles City Police Department. Keith Broughton.
Good afternoon. Judge, you forgive me for a minute. I do want to acknowledge one group of guests here, and that's all of our law enforcement survivors, because this day is about you also. Kentucky Cops would like to thank you for the opportunity to be here to the dedication of this memorial. This monument memorial to these officers who've died in the line of duty while protecting this community, where many spent their entire life. As Mr. Johnson said, some were born here, grew up here, went to school here, and raised families here. KY Cops, Concerns of Police Survivors, is part of a national organization made up of volunteers that provides support to the families of law enforcement officers killed in the line of duty and the co-workers of those officers. I'm privileged to have met two fine people during that, Judy Patton, and I serve on the board of directors with Karen Leonard. This monument today that we dedicate should serve as a reminder to all of us in law enforcement that we need to continue to serve our communities and our people with the same professionalism and dedication that these officers exhibited. It also is a reminder to all of us to remember the sacrifice that these officers made, and they'll never be forgotten. And most importantly, never forget their surviving families, because they also have sacrificed for us more than they deserve. And with that, I'm going to keep my comments short. I'd like to introduce you Karen Leonard, that many of y'all know.
Put my glasses on. I am honored to be here today. I am here today in memory of my son, Kentucky State Trooper Jonathan Kyle Leonard. His end of watch was 12/19/06, and other families whose lives have been touched by line of duty deaths. Jonathan always wanted to be a Kentucky State Trooper. He loved and respected the men and women in gray, especially Post 9. Post 9 has now become our family. The monument you are unveiling today is bittersweet. I am so thankful that finally the people of this community have a place to come, honor, and show their respects to our loved ones. The names on this monument gave their lives to protect our community that they loved so much. For me, this monument will be a constant reminder of their sacrifices were not in vain. I am here to show my support for Eric Johnson and Supporting Heroes in concern of police survivors. And our former First Lady, Judy Patton, was very instrumental in forming the Kentucky chapter in Frankfort. I would also like to recognize Julie Smith. She is president of COPS, of the Kentucky chapter of COPS. Julie is also in law enforcement. And I became aware of COPS organization after Jonathan's death when they asked if I would go on the annual COPS walk. It's 25 miles over 2 days, and it's always in October. Going on the walk was the best thing I ever done for myself. I met so many family members who had lost their sons, dads, brothers, sisters, and moms, whose stories were similar to mine. I discovered through that time that I also was a survivor. COPS' continued support showed me and other families we will never be alone, and Jonathan will always be remembered. COPS offers support for parents, co-workers, spouses, significant others, and especially the children. I say this because I have learned over the past 7 years, by the grace of God and His mercies, our KSP family and the COPS organization Supporting Heroes, I am blessed beyond measure. In closing, I want to say again, thanks to the City of Pikeville, the county, and the community for making this monument a reality. Thank you so much.
probably one group and one organization brought about the reality of one of the monuments that we are dedicating here today, and that is the Fallen Police Officers Memorial Monument. And that individual who had a dream, and we'll see that dream come into reality as the county government and Judge Rutherford met a number of months ago with Mr. Terry Thompson, and who told him about his dream and the dreams of the Pike County chapter of the Fraternal Order of the Police, to have this monument and to have it here on the courthouse grounds where today we dedicate it as a reality. Terry Thompson is the president of the Pike County Fraternal Order of the Police and is retired after 23 years of distinguished service with the Kentucky State Police. Mr. Thompson has worked tirelessly and ceaselessly to make today happen. His efforts have been really the linchpin and the driving force behind the Fallen Police Officers Memorial Monument. And I know he would say and want me to say that he had a whole lot of help with that. But he was the one who, as we like to say, grabbed the bull by the horns and took the lead on this. Terry knew that these fallen heroes and their families deserved this recognition. And we hope, and it is his hope and all of our hopes, that this monument will stand for the ages. It is my honor to introduce to you Terry Thompson.
Thank you all. I want to give just a brief history of how this came about. From 1911 to 2013, we have lost 26 police officers that we know of so far here in Pike County, which is the largest county in the state, encompassing 782 square miles. The Fraternal Order of Police, we've been obtaining names of the fallen officers for approximately 3 years. We've obtained records from several sources and have managed to document the fallen back to 1911. After obtaining the names of the fallen officers, we worked on the design of the monument with Larry Thacker and his staff at Thacker Memorial. When we spoke to Judge Rutherford about a place to put the monument, we found out that he and his staff were planning a fallen officers memorial wall in the courthouse hallway. The two ideas complemented each other, and we started working together then to get this done. We raised approximately $14,000 thanks to the donation of many people who believed in this project. And thanks to them, 26 police officers whose names were lost in history will now be honored by having their names etched on the Fallen Officers Memorial Monument, and also by having a brief account of how they lost their lives in the line of duty on the Fallen Officers Memorial Wall here in the courthouse. On behalf of the Fraternal Order of Police, we would like to thank Judy Patton, Judge Rutherford, Larry Thacker, along with other people, all the other people who helped make this Fraternal Order of Police monument a reality. Thank you all.
Our next speaker is Senator Ray S. Jones II, and he's not only a state senator, a good friend of mine, and I dare say all of you. But he's been asked to speak not only because of his speaking ability and his eloquence, but because he has a matter of the heart about which to speak. You heard me tell about Deputy Sheriff Thomas C. Tackett, who is on these memorials. And it's Thomas C., and most people knew him as Crit Tackett. Senator Jones is the great-grandson of Crit Tackett, who lost his life in the line of duty. And Senator Jones is going to speak with us today and speak to us today about what it means to be a family member of one of these fallen heroes. He's not only going to speak from the standpoint of his own family, but from the standpoint of each of you who have lost your family in the line of duty. Senator Jones, in addition to serving as Kentucky State Senator for the 31st District, he has that very personal reason for being here, and I've told you all about that. Throughout his tenure in the Kentucky General Assembly, Senator Jones has proven to be a friend of law enforcement. His record speaks loud and clear to that. He has worked to better equip our officers for the work they do, and we're thankful for Senator Jones's efforts in that regard. I give you Senator Reyes Jones II.
Well, it's certainly a privilege to be here today, and normally I'm not too emotional at public events, but I can tell you that this is a much more personal day than I even realized it would be. And on behalf of all the families who have lost loved ones in the line of duty, I want to thank you for being here. And I say that because Monday will be 84 years since my great-grandfather passed away. And somebody would say, well, why are you emotional? You never knew your great-grandfather. Let me tell you a little story. My grandmother, Nora, two of her nieces and one of her great-nephews is here today. My grandmother was one of the smartest ladies I've ever met. She had an 8th grade education. And the reason that she went no farther than 8th grade was because when her father was killed, she had to quit school and go to work to help support the family. At that time, there were 8 children. The oldest, I believe, Orville. And some of you, Orville's son was Claude Tackett, who retired as a state police detective. Orville was the oldest. I think he was around 19 when his dad was killed. The youngest child was Vera. She was 3 weeks old. Now imagine losing your father when you're 3 weeks old. Imagine losing a husband when you had 7 children at home to support. At that time, there was no federal death benefit subsidy for the families of fallen law enforcement officers. There was no workers' compensation system. Social Security didn't exist. And many of the children had to basically raise what they ate. They had to quit school. They had to go to work. In 2001, about a week after I took office, my dad and I went up to Rising Sun, Maryland, to visit my grandmother's sister, Martha. Martha was up in years. Her and her husband, Jim, were not doing well. And we went up to visit. It's the last time I actually got to see her. And I started talking to her about what it was like to grow up in eastern Kentucky at a time when things were so much different. When there were no 4-lane highways, when we didn't have public schools like we do. And she talked about how poor this area was at that time. And she talked about how poor their family was and how her mother, Martha, or Martha's mother, Mary, always was against my great-grandfather going into law enforcement. He was actually, for a period of time, was police chief in Weeksbury, Sean. And it was such an emotional subject when Martha started talking about this. And keep in mind, she was about 90 at the time, or close to 90. And she started breaking out into tears. And it had been that long, over 70 years since her dad had died. But the toll that it had on our family, and I think if you'll talk to the families of all the law enforcement officers, it never stops hurting. My dad never knew his grandfather. His aunt, Vera, never knew her dad. I mean, you're talking about substantial loss. And some of the officers whose names will be on this memorial, they're not represented by family members here today. But on behalf of all of those family members, let me thank you for being here, because it does matter, and it's important that the sacrifice of so many people over the years has not been forgotten. And that touches my heart, and I hope that, that for those of you who are not related to the law enforcement officers whose names are on the memorial, is that you remember the sacrifice. It is personal for me because not only my great grandfather, but people like Poss Keene that I knew growing up. People like, I know the Smith family, Steve Friend. When you look around this room, these are people who have been members of this community for a long, long time, and they love this community. And their families have paid tremendous sacrifices. And last but not least, the Conway family. I know you all, I love you all, and I know it had to be a tremendous sacrifice to lose your dad under those circumstances. And hopefully this memorial will tell future generations after we're gone of the sacrifices that our loved ones have made. But I also truly believe that out of tremendous loss, there can be tremendous gain. Karen, would you come here a second, please? This is a lady that I have, unfortunately, only got to know after the death of her son. But I can tell you that out of the tragic loss of her son, she has worked so hard on behalf of law enforcement officers and the families of deceased law enforcement officers. 2 years ago, I guess it's been, she came to me with an idea with then Lieutenant Henry Banks about a piece of legislation that had been passed in some other states. It was called the Blue Alert Law. And the purpose of that law was to make sure that if a law enforcement officer was killed or injured in the line of duty and a perpetrator was on the loose, or there was some issue about where a notice needed to be put out to members of the general public, that would be used, it would basically use the Amber Alert system. And she brought that bill to me, and we were able to get wide bipartisan support and pass that legislation. And but for Karen's efforts, that would never have happened. And what I said when Governor Beshear signed that bill into law, and we named it after Jonathan, is I hope this bill is never, ever used. But if it's ever needed, it will be there. And it was due solely to the efforts of Karen Leonard. Karen, thank you all. And
Thank you. You helped me.
And with that, I'm going to conclude and just say again, thank you all on behalf of all the family members of those whose names are on this memorial. God bless you.
Thank you, Senator. And the Honorable Wayne T. Rutherford was first elected Pike County Judge in 1969. He is the longest-serving county judge in Pike County's history, currently serving in his 6th term. Prior to his first election to the office of county judge, however, Judge Rutherford served as a probation and parole officer for a number of years right here in Pike County. He knows all too well from that personal experience the sacrifices and oftentimes dangerous situations that officers must make on a daily basis. Today is a special day for everyone here, but for Judge Rutherford, it is also a proud occasion because this has been a personal goal of the judges. Believe me, my office is right beside him as his deputy judge, and I know his heart for these two monuments that we're dedicating today. It has been a personal goal, and he has worked hard to make these become a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, Pike County Judge Wayne T. Rutherford.
Thank you, Judge Hayes. I was sitting there looking at Governor Patton and thought how many times during his 8 years as governor that you'd been in a setting like this, and it's of honored fallen officers of this Commonwealth. I was 12 years old. I was shooting a basketball. It was in July. Across the road from my house in Shelbyana, upon the old barn where we had the gold, was a campaign sign, Roy Conway. My mother hollered at me and told me to come to the house. My family had supported Roy Conway just months before that. My mother told me that there had been a murder that the chief law enforcement officer of Pike County had been murdered. At that young age, it just absolutely tore me all to pieces. I remember my mother and dad talking, should we take him to the funeral or not take him to the funeral? Would it help him? And they took me to the funeral home, to the funeral. That was traumatic on me at that age. The name of Glenn Hayes Moore called today. I went to school with Glenn. He lived just on the hill above me. My childhood friend. Shot marbles with him, played basketball with him. 12 of these people's names. I belong to the Noe Friend Rook Circle, Steve, if you remember. Mobley and Uzzo was my friends. I was the last fellow that I was with Butch Clifton when he got the call from the courthouse square to come to a disturbance at Johnnyton. Many of the Foster King raised up where I was raised. The Thacker family that I've not seen all of you. As you girls know, and those in the Smith family. Been at your house many times. Eat at your house, your mother and dad, Earl Smith. So it's a tough day for me to, Fuzzy, and to you, all of you officials, to be here today, to do this. But the Pike County Fiscal Court, we have attempted to honor people who we felt ought to be honored in this county. I look at police officers as I look at soldiers who keep us free. I look at peace officers in the same vein. What you all do for us, what you do in our city and our county and state and this Commonwealth. But it's one Saturday, I work every Saturday if I'm in town, and I was coming to the courthouse to work almost, I guess, Terry, 2 years ago. Fraternal Order of Police had a setup on the courthouse square next to Main Street, selling hot dogs, pop, to the Main Street crowd. Terry Thompson hollered at me and said, "Judge, I want to talk to you." And he talked about the dream that he and the Fraternal Order of Police had of putting a monument in honor of fallen peace officers. And I said, "Terry, I want you to call Jeannie in my office, Chief of Staff. Let's put a committee together. Let's go to work and see if we can make this happen." Governor, we had a grant, coal severance tax, ATF funds through the Area Development District. Jeannie said we have some money that we could do something inside. Terry and the Fraternal Order of Police had decided that they could put a 10-foot approximately monument on the outside, and that I said we could do something in the hallway. We brought on the Conway family and Judy on our committee. And we started to work and to plan of how we could do this. Outside, the 10-foot monument would have the badges of all these agencies, police agencies that's been mentioned, and then the names on it. Larry Thacker, and I see Larry back here. Larry's been an integral part of this plan, and Terry Thompson and I both know that from the beginning, because everything on that monument had been edged out at his facility. So then, once this committee started working, and once the research continued, and it's not over with, Judge Hayes told you we need some pictures and so forth in the future so that we can complete this project. But Jeannie Robinson in my office coordinated this thing with everybody involved. and the committee, they attended the meetings. County attorneys attended the meetings down the hallway, and all the people in my office attended it, and the representatives of the family, and Terry Thompson, Mr. Collier, leaning back against the wall back here, whom the physical court contracted to do the work in the hallway. His advice to us has been invaluable, that we could, and you will see once it's unveiled in the hallway, the job that he has done and that this committee has done. And I want to commend all of you for your hard work. My heart is heavy. God bless each one of you family members here. I'm going through just a little bit of what you're going through today because of my friendship and knowledge of the names called out. And I go back to the fact that I went to school with Glenn Hayes Moore, and he was my childhood friend. But we all must give God credit for everything that happens, and I give him credit for giving us the wisdom, all of us, to work together to do something that ought to have been done many years ago. And I want to thank the Conway family, especially Judy, who molded this together when she come on board and became part of the committee. So thank you all, and thank everybody that come here today, and thank all the officials that's here to give us support, because I need it just like all of you. Thank you, and God bless.
Judy Conway Patton is our keynote speaker today, and during Judy's 8-year tenure from 1995 to 2003 as First Lady of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, she was dedicated to the welfare of Kentucky's women and children. During this time, she established the Office of Child Abuse and Domestic Violence Prevention, the Office of Women's Physical and Mental Health, served as an active member of the Kentucky Commission on Women, co-chaired the first Economic Summit on Women, established the Center for Research on Violence Against Women at the University of Kentucky, established 15 child advocacy centers, 15 spouse abuse centers, and created the first task force on breast cancer. She established the First Lady's Celebration of Hope for breast cancer survivors and secured the passage of 25 laws for the protection of women and children and 5 laws improving health care for victims of breast cancer. She served as vice chair and then the chair of the National Governors Association Spouses Leadership Organization and was recognized by Vice President Al Gore for her work on sexual assault by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, by the James Graham Brown Cancer Center, and by the Kentucky Breast Cancer Coalition for her advocacy. Judy, who is of Cherokee descent, established by the Kentucky Native American Commission. She worked with Kentucky Supreme Court Justice Robert Stevens to establish the Kentucky system of family courts, which has proven to be a model for the rest of the nation. In 2003, Judy was recognized as Kentuckian of the Year by Kentucky Monthly Magazine, and also recognized as a Woman of Achievement by the Kentucky Commission on Women. At that time, her portrait was hung in the women's corridor of the state capitol. In 2010, she was named a Woman of Distinction by the Center for Women and Families in Louisville, and in 2012, she was the recipient of the Volunteer Leadership Individual Award from the National Children's Alliance. She was awarded honorary doctorates from Pikeville College and Morehead State University, the alma maters of her parents, Roy and Esta Craft Conway. In recognition of Judy's work with abused women, Letcher County opened the Esta Craft Conway Spouse Abuse Center in honor of her mother, an Eastern Kentucky social worker. Judy considers her work with women and children as a continuance of her mother's legacy. I am the daughter of a social worker, she often said. I am a voice for women and children who are not heard in the halls of the Capitol. The former First Lady now sits on the board of Judy's Place for Kids in Pikeville, is co-chairperson of the Pike County Tourism Commission, on the board of the Big Sandy Community and Technical College Foundation, the Fine Arts Commission for Pike County Extension, the Kentucky Heritage Commission, and WestCare, a faith-based drug rehabilitation and emergency shelter center facility operator right here in Pikeville. She is a member of the Kentucky Federation of Women's Club, the DAR, and was the 2007 recipient of the Paul Harris Fellow presented by the Pikeville Rotary Club. She lives in Pikeville and is married to Paul Patton, who many of you have heard of as being a former governor, and a distinguished governor at that. But I think his First Lady certainly equaled or matched that distinguished record of our native son, Paul Patton. Paul and Judy have 4 children, Nikki, Chris, Janet, Jan, and Bambi. I present to you Judy Conway Patton.
Good afternoon. And what a wonderful afternoon this is. Thank you, Judge Rutherford, and the Fiscal Court for providing a place of honor and for the plaques in the Heritage Hall and for the monument for all to see outside this beautiful historic courthouse. Terry Thompson, thank you so much. And FOP for securing the funds to make this day possible. David Collier, for your long hours and devotion in creating these beautiful and very unique plaques. And Larry Thacker, for working so closely with all of them in the design to make this day a reality. I'd like to introduce my family, of course, Paul. I think you can stand up, I'll let you. Our son, Jan, my grandson, Jan Jr., his fiancee, Jamie, my sister, Colleen, her husband, Walter, your younger sister, Nancy Roy. Well, it's always been a double name. When the 4th daughter was born, Daddy just gave his hands over everyone having a son. So he says, we're going to name her Roy. Well, it took a lot of talking to convince him we had to put a little girl's name in front of that boy's name. So he relented, and so it's been Nancy Roy, the baby sister, and her husband, James. And I also want to thank the members of COPS. And thank you all for being up here today. And Eric, it's been a long time since I've seen you. Thank you so much. And Brenda, thank you for your words to what COPS has meant to you and to all as survivors. Both of these organizations, Supporting Heroes and COPS, they're a wonderful support group for not only the spouses and their children of the fallen officers, but also the parents, grandparents, siblings, aunts and uncles, cousins and friends who grieve over the loss of a loved one. Now, just last Saturday, Paul and I was in Lexington to attend the annual COPS Christmas party. And there I met a family who had become new members. The family of Jason Ellis, the Bardstown police officer ambushed on his way home from a shift protecting the people of his community. His mother said, I don't know what I'd have done or how we could survive without the COPS organization. They were there with me from day one, and you know what? They're with us forever. You know, and both these organizations, Supporting Heroes and COPS, they're a great organization, but it is an organization none of us want to become members of. And I always said, I just truly wished my sisters, my mother and I, had received the services of the support group when we suffered the tragedy that we all represent here today endured. We were our own support group, and only because our mother was such a strong mountain woman that we survived. She kept Daddy's memory alive each day. And I remember how many times my mama was heartbroken when she wanted to talk to some other people about Daddy. Back then, she was told, Esther, get over it. Believe me, you never get over it. My memory of my mama, my three sisters and I, watching my father die on the street in front of our home with a shotgun wound to his back is as vivid today as it happened last night. And his watch was July 28, 1950. No, you never get over it. And all those who have lost their loved ones can also tell you the exact second that they got the news. It's a moment locked in time for us and all survivors. You know, Mama never remarried because she said she could never find another Roy Conway. He was special. All of you today, here in uniform, whether it be the brown of the deputies, the blues of the city police, the grays of the Kentucky State Police, which we refer to sometimes as a thin gray line, you're special. Every man and woman all across this great nation wearing that uniform, they're special. You chose to serve. And I have said many times before, and I truly believe this, sometimes when a certain child is born, an angel comes down and touches them and softly says, you have been selected as one of the chosen few to serve and protect your fellow man, woman, and child. And I think most of you knew a long, long time ago this is going to be your life's work. Yes, you're very, very special. You know, throughout the coming years, thousands will walk through this courthouse and see the plaques and look at the names and to watch. They review the monument and admire it. They will not know the men on these plaques or the names of those etched and granite on this beautiful monument, but they will know that these men gave the greatest sacrifice of all for the protection, safety, and well-being of their fellow man. We, as families and survivors, will see the plaques, read them, touch them, and a tear will form. We will view this beautiful monument outside, touch the name, and the tears will flow down our cheeks. Because we know that their sacrifice was not in vain. and now they will never be forgotten. I know this memorial is part of the healing process that many of us has been going through for so many years. It's been a long time coming. The National Monument of Fallen Officers in Washington, D.C. is absolutely phenomenal, with its huge stone lines in front guarding the entrance. We get a little piece of paper and a pencil, and we trace their name, bring the paper back, and frame it. The Kentucky Memorial Fallen Officer in Richmond is absolutely beautiful. You walk through it, and it's so calm and serene that you feel at peace. But this monument of our fallen heroes is ours, our families, our friends. We can drive by every day and see it. We can walk by it every day and touch it. We can walk in the courthouse and see the plaques anytime we choose. It is ours, our families, and our friends. It is not only a healing process, it is a blessing and a celebration of what their lives are and what they did and what they gave for us. This is a beautiful day. The sun is shining brightly down this monument of our fallen heroes. And in a way, I think we all can feel their presence. If you listen very closely, they are saying, "We were just doing our sworn duty to serve and protect mankind." Again, we families of these fallen officers and heroes extend a heartfelt thanks to Wayne, Phyllis Court, your office people who have worked so hard on this, Terry, the FOP, David, and Larry. And I, for one, will be forever grateful and hold you dear to my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. This time I would again ask you to stand, and let's take just another moment of silence to remember and to reflect on those heroes whose names we've heard today, and to the equally heroic families, the survivors of those fallen officers. At the conclusion of this moment of silence, I would ask that Quinn Helfen, a Pikeville Junior High School student who we're proud to have present here today as a Boy Scout and a music student at Pikeville Junior High, to play taps. Please bow with me. Thank you. Quinn Heflin.